Alright everyone, now it's time to talk about a little bit of a conundrum which has to do with migration from tyrannical nations, most of which are far left leaning. So you'd think China, link in the description archived of course references that. The number of crossings at the southern border from Chinese nationals has skyrocketed in the last few years. Generally they fly to Ecuador and then they come up via that route because there's visa-free travel through Ecuador. There are other routes, but that appears to be the most common one. By the way, it's very interesting. Ecuador tends to be a bit far left too. I wonder why there'd be visa-free travel between these two countries. Here's what I posit though. There's a conundrum here. One group of people that comes into your country illegally or seeking asylum or however they're coming in from a nation like, say, China. We'll just use the example from the link in the description. One group of those people are espionage agents and communist loyalists and things like that. So you'd have a communist who, basically in the modern sense, Chinese communism has basically become fascism. So you have a fascist from China who wants to come to the country in order to simply gorge themselves on U.S. wealth and plunder and infiltrate. Or you have a spy, an espionage agent or something like that. But then the second group of people, which is much larger, are people who genuinely want to leave the system behind. We see this among Venezuelans. Certainly the most notorious example is Cubans. Cuban voters within the United States who have gained asylum because they escaped Castro tend to be remarkably conservative. They are not happy, by the way, right now about the leftoids trying to cancel the Monroe Doctrine. There were a number of congressional members with Cuban ties that were ranting about that not long ago. So while you will get some spies and some infiltrators and some subversives, you also have this vast bulk of people who actually become hyper-patriotic. They become arguably more patriotic than many native-born Americans. And so the conundrum is about what to do about migration from tyrannical nations. Some people would say, well, it doesn't matter, they can deal with it in their own country. Others are like, come all ye faithful, open the borders. And then there are more nuanced approaches. For instance, we have the wet foot, dry foot policy towards Cuba, or at least we did. I'm not sure if that's still been continued, specifically because we recognize that somebody who's willing to get onto an inflatable tire with a bedsheet mast attached to it and sail across the Caribbean from Cuba to the coast of Florida, probably if they're willing to go through that, number one, they're not going to be welcome back in their home country. They get killed upon entering or they get put in the gulag, so it's kind of unkind to send them back. Number two, they're probably, if they're willing to go through that risk, they're going to fit in the United States. They have that indomitable spirit, so to speak. If somebody's willing to come from Venezuela with its poverty and its communism and its stupidity and its tyranny, and they're willing to travel 1,000 miles on a skeleton train after traversing several jungles and then wander through the desert just to reach the border, again, chances are that they're going to be a fairly patriotic individual. I've noticed this myself, not about illegal aliens specifically. When I was down in Texas, in a community that was almost entirely Hispanic, it was completely Mexican. I was one of 2 or 3 Anglo-Saxons, I think, that were in the whole region. I noticed that there is a hefty focus on Americana, on Americanism. That is a real appreciation for it. While Spanish may still be spoken in the home, it's like, classic cars and guns and stuff like that. It truly fits in with especially the Texan culture. And that's what I notice. And over time, through subsequent generations, eventually the lineage sort of dissipates as far as having any connection to the home country at all anyway. And there's assimilation. I would point out that assimilation rates are going to be higher in a nation like the United States simply because of the civic mythos than a nation that's become much more decadent and doesn't really do that. So in the United States, there's American flags everywhere. You go to the Netherlands and on a couple of holidays you'll see a few of them, for example. There's a difference between the culture's capability of assimilating people. That's the other point. You go to Germany, you're not going to see a German flag anywhere. It's probably verboten to fly one. Go to Mexico, you'll see plenty of Mexican flags though. People love their fucking country. The New World is a little bit different from the Old World in that respect. The conundrum is how do you prevent the spies, etc., from coming into your country while thinking about, hey, you've got this pool of people that are used to crushing poverty, so they don't mind hard work. They don't mind being poor, which most first-gen immigrants tend to be. They're going to work hard. They definitely don't want to get deported because they'll get killed or gulagged, so they're probably not going to go out of their way to break the law. How do you try to successfully absorb that group of people and give them the skills that they need? Because one thing that I have a problem with the United States, above almost all else, is right now we're allowing basically anyone into the country, except for people that we would want in the country. With the legal immigration process is so onerous that people just walk across the border. I support making the process a lot more simple for legal immigration. It should require much more long-term sacrifice than it currently does. But as far as the legal loopholes and regulation aspect, it should be, in my opinion, quite a bit lessened rather. Have you seen the process to apply for immigration to the United States and how onerous it can be? We almost disincentivize legal immigration. I know what some of my audience will say, well, we don't need any immigrants at all. We're full. Fuck off. Okay, you can have that tack too. I mean, it's better than what we're currently doing, honestly. I do believe in building a big, beautiful wall, although Mexico is not going to pay for it. I would just say, if somebody's willing to flee a foreign country, think about it this way. Here's another example with China. Think about it this way. China has literally set up police stations, fake police stations in the United States because there are so many people that have fled China for the U.S. for greener pastures in order to have a taste of freedom and the possibility of prosperity, if not the guarantee of it, that they literally send commie agents to the United States to pose as police officers to harass these people and try to abduct them and bring them back to their home country to go to their next struggle session. Well, I mean, I think the United States has definitely succeeded in life. The problem is, that, of course, finding that counterbalance and making sure that you don't unsucceed yourself, a little bit more difficult. But it's a little bit of a conundrum. Because one part of me is like, I want America for Americans. The other part of me is, well, I do feel sorry for people in fucking commie countries. And they're not all spies, just to be clear. That's about all. Peace out.